Yeah, I think kind of to start, well, I think a good place to start is to kind of talk about the course itself. It's a pretty standard, I would say, run-of-the-mill gravel course. Starts in the beautiful town of Ketchum, Idaho. Right, actually, it starts like where the start is probably less than a mile from the exact location that I was born. So there used to be a
Is that like the general hospital?
No, so there actually used to be a hospital in the resort of Sun Valley. So Sun Valley, so there's like, it's kind of this big valley. There's a few little towns. Ketchum is kind of the main town of like where the ski area is, and then Sun Valley is the resort. And there used to be a hospital in there. That's where I was born. And so this the race starts on Sun Valley Road. So it's a very
taking you back to your roots.
Back to the roots. That's pretty cool. But yeah, so it starts in Ketchum, and it's pretty like it's a neutral rollout essentially, because it starts right on the outskirts of town, and it's paved for like the first couple of miles on just this road called Trail Creek, which is heading out towards the big first climb of the day, because you climb up over this summit and then drop down into you can kind of see this basin, which eventually turns into the Copper Basin, which is kind of that big lollipop loop.
Sorry to interrupt. This is Jackson's Training Peaks file from the baked potato last year. We'll reference this. This is the course GPS, the elevation profile. This is heart rate. This is miles per hour. 4 hours, 49 minutes. 89 miles. So we'll reference this for the video version here. And
yeah, just to clarify too, the course is slightly different this year from what you'll see on the Training Peaks and the Strava file, which we'll pull up as well. This year is they extended it, so now it's 100 miles. There's this extra little kind of out and back section to Wild Horse Campground basically, and then they are running the Copper Basin loop clockwise this year instead of counterclockwise, which I'll talk about.
It's right here.
So
last year y'all went this way.
Yeah. And it doesn't change a whole lot, but definitely still going to be hard, fast. But yeah, so like I said, it starts a few miles neutral from the get-go on pavement. Everyone's just kind of at this point, like at least the last few years. I mean, the thing about Idaho is it's cold and dark in the mornings there. We're a little bit more north of Colorado, and so like it's freezing cold at the start. And
like 35 degrees freezing?
No, like I mean, I wonder if you can see the temperature. Can you see that?
Yeah, here actually.
But it's like I was in arm warmers and a vest and stuff at the beginning.
39 degrees. Yeah. Went down to 34. Good gosh.
Yeah, so it's chilly. It's very chilly.
What did you?
I was shivering, and so I had I think.
What did you wear to start?
Arm warmers and a vest, and
then the temperature got up to looks like 68, and then
up over here is
82.
Yeah, so it's a pretty big like differential.
40 degree difference.
So you have to be prepared for that. And so the thing about the start is that it's cold, like obviously, and so you're kind of riding out. It's still a little bit like early morning. Everyone's kind of chatting, and so you're going slow. And this is a key thing here, because you're basically kind of rolling out chill on this like pretty kind of gradual uphill paved section, and then you hit the climb. And so warm up is kind of important.
You get like what? It's Joe Rogan.
It's Joe Rogan just in your pocket. Yeah. So what is that?
That was.
So it's
28 minutes.
Yeah. So you get like a little bit of warm up, but I remember not being super warmed up because it's still average probably
30. You're in the
38 degrees, for that section. And so you just don't want to go into that climb super freezing cold, because it kind of starts off the bat, and that's where the fireworks start to go.
Dang, you went up to 185 heart rate midway up the climb.
Which is not actually that high for me.
Oh.
But
these young kids.
I know, these kids these days. But yeah, so this is kind of the key section. And if you take anything out of this podcast or out of the discussion of this course, this is the time that you should stop what you're doing and focus and pay attention to what we're talking about here, because this climb, you basically do it twice throughout the race because it's kind of an out and back lollipop, is Trail Creek Summit. And it starts off the first I think it looks like 1.3 miles is paved, and it's not that steep. It's just like it's pretty chill, but then you hit the gravel, and the gravel is it's pretty packed, but it's chunky, and so there's a good and there's a bad line. There's a lot of rocks.
It's probably where your average speed goes way down.
Yeah, exactly.
Right
And so what happens here is that groups form, of course, and people are going super hard because it's super important to go over the top of this climb with a group, a good group, a group that you can hang with, and be a group that is likely to work and ride well, because you crest the top of the climb. And if you go back to the Strava file, the full climb is, what is it? What's the length of it?
4.1 miles,
yeah,
6% grade.
So 4 miles, it's about a 30-minute climb. And so a lot of damage can be done in that time, especially right off the bat, because the group is big. You don't want to be starting the climb in the back. I mean, they let everyone go together, all the baked potato people. And so...
how many people usually are there? Like 500?
Yeah, I think there's probably like 500 people signed up for the baked potato right now.
So it's a large group rolling out.
It's a big group.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to kind of get into the mode of like when you're rolling out neutral, it's cold, you're chatting with your friends. It's easy to like forget that, the time goes past, and then pretty soon you're right there at the climb. So start moving up, start, being in that front third, if you can, because once the climb hits, it's a pretty narrow road, especially the gravel section. It's hard to move up, because you basically hit the top of the climb, and there's an aid station there, which I don't really recommend.
Skip it.
Like, I've never stopped for a bottle or taken a bottle there. I mean, if you're feeling like you need it, or if it's exceptionally warm this year, you can grab a bottle and just take a sip and chuck it. But it's pretty fast ripping descent on gravel down the other side. It's pretty straight. There's not a lot of corners, and you can see it.
You hit 42 miles an hour coming off the,
it's super fast. And
yeah.
It's the same kind of general kind of gravel quality. Like, there's a lot of rocks. You have to be mindful about your line, and there's big, what do they call them, baby heads or whatever,
baby heads.
Yeah. And so you just have to be careful of your line, especially if you're in a group and you're trying to like stick around, because it's just like straight and fast. And if you watch the video I made, I have some GoPro footage of that. But you want to be in a group here, because once you hit the bottom, it's a little bit deceptive on the Training Peaks file, because
this is only a negative 1.7%.
And how long does
grade.
that take? It's
that took you 20 minutes.
So that's definitely not the entire descent.
Yeah.
Like the climb descent, because
look at your average speed.
Yeah.
30 miles an hour.
Yeah, it's fast.
Yeah.
It's fast. And then because if you look at it here, I don't know if they have the descent on the
Yeah, keep maybe scrolling down.
So I doubt that they have the full
There
descent.
we go.
But basically, so you come off the descent off the top of the climb, and then it quickly goes into this kind of 10-mile section, which is basically net downhill, as you can see from this.
20 minutes.
It's
Yeah.
And it's super fast. It's but if you're just by yourself and in no man's land, you can lose a ton of time, because at least every time I've done it, the group works together pretty well. They're wanting to recover a bit after the climb, but by pace lining and working well. And this is where, like you mentioned, being a roadie comes into play, because what happens is a lot of times, and this happened to me one of my first years of doing it, and it really frustrated me because I was still racing road at the time. there was some clearly mountain bike racers in there just getting on the, like, we were pace lining and they would get on the front and do the classic, like, smash it, let a huge gap open, and just disrupt the whole flow of the pace line. And so you have to be able to use those road racing skills in this circumstance, because you can roll really fast while still recovering, still make up a lot of time. And at this point in the race, there's like a bunch of different groups already. And so, but at the same time, if you go too hard up the climb and you get into a group that's a little bit too hard for you, you could pay for it later. I've been there, I've done that, and it sucks. Yeah, and you can get caught again by a different group. And so what happened last year was I was kind of in one of the first groups on the road going over the top of the climb. We chilled and took it easy. We even took a pee stop right there. I think you can see
Nice. Yeah, you can see the gap. I was going to ask you if that was an aid station.
Yeah, you can see the gap. We stopped and took a pee.
Who does that?
I don't know.
Huh.
It was, yeah, I mean, I had to pee super bad. So, but then it's like you can see after that I had to chase pretty hard. So there was, so that kind of, I paid for that a little bit, looking back at it. But then another group caught up to us, and so we had a big group. But just a little bit more about this kind of flat section is you're going to come back on this, and so it's really important to look at it, to remember it, because it's the most demoralizing 10-mile stretch ever on the way back, because it's always a headwind, and it's like you can see, coming, you can basically see the climb that you have to go back up, and it's, if you're just by yourself, you're suffering.
This is that.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Okay.
And so what happens there is you're already cracked from the whole race basically, and what happens is it's headwindy, it's a lot hotter, and it's pretty slow because it's like gradual uphill, and as a result it's mental, it's really difficult, you're tired, and then you have to hit the backside of that climb again before descending down into the finish. And so we'll talk about that, but if you can, you want to get into a group there, especially at the end, because I've been there by myself before and it's demoralizing.
It helps pace you, keep you probably more concentrated on the effort than you probably could on your own. Trying to hold wheels is going to be easier than being stuck in no man's land.
Okay, so essentially what happens here is, and I'll come to the Strava, I guess, is that you come through, you do that kind of flat 10-mile section, and then you make this right-hand turn. And once you make this right-hand turn, you're heading out towards the Copper Basin, which is the main loop of the course. And the Copper Basin, when I wrote it, and I talk about this in the video, when I wrote it, it was in pretty bad shapes, because there's a lot of these redneck golf carts, as I like to call them, that use these roads, those little, like, the quads. Yeah. And so they just basically turn these roads into like washboard city. And so it's just I mean, most of the course is, it's rolling. This whole loop is pretty rolling. There's a few short punchy climbs, but I think like we were talking about before we started recording, the average speed is still pretty decent for this.
By and large, it looks like, with the exception of this climb, this is in between the descent to the climb and then when you circle back and do that, it's more or less, I mean, we're talking grade of 0.1. This is not very representative. The y-axis in Training Peaks here makes it looks like it's a lot of climbing. What do you want to look at?
Well, I wonder what this does.
Do you want to zoom in on this section?
No, I mean, I just was saying, but it looks like I was averaging about 18 miles an hour. Yeah. So it's still really fast. It's pretty rolly, and
you want to be in a group.
You want to be in a group.
Yeah.
But it's also really hard on you because it's a really rough gravel section. I mean, it's packed down. It's not like loose, but it's just lots of rocks, lots of washboard, and I just remember like my arms.
Do you have front fork suspension?
No, I wish.
Would it be a good course for that?
I mean, I'm still not necessarily sold on the whole suspension on gravel bikes, but I mean, a lot of people I've seen there with those Lauf forks.
Yeah, the true True Grit or whatever.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I've never ridden one, so I don't know. I mean,
I've
I could
ridden
see
one.
it. I could see how it'd be nice.
Mm-hmm.
But I think having a bigger volume tire, running lower pressure tubeless, I think can do, be pretty.
What's your
beneficial.
tire choice for that?
So last year I ran a 38 mil Gravel King SK because I was doing the stage race, and you have to use the same tire and bike setup for all 3 stages. And we're not going to talk too much about the stage race because it's pretty small. And I mean, I can just mention quickly about it, but basically stage 1 is essentially a mountain bike race, cross-country mountain bike race. And so you start up at this place called Galena, which has all these amazing single track mountain bike trails. And you do all these crazy loops in the single track, and it's pretty smooth, flowy, kind of like primo single track. So you can ride it.
Grode.
It's premium grode single track. But I wanted to have a bigger tire because I'm not a super comfortable rider on that stuff. And so I think a 38 mil tire is probably a good bet for this year because of just how kind of rough it is. I'm going to be doing 35 this year.
I'm going to be doing 32 if I do it.
Yeah.
Because that's all I got.
Yeah. Which will be fine. I mean,
and didn't you say Josh
Barry,
won it on a 28
road
bike?
One of the first years of Rebecca's, Josh Barry, who's also a local to Sun Valley, won it on a road bike.
Okay.
So I don't know exactly what his tire was, but I think it was probably a 28, 25. So it's possible, but I don't recommend that because it would be pretty brutal. And so we did have a question.
Now that we're talking about tires and tire pressure, we did have a listener question, and he says he's doing the baked potato, and he's asking about wheel tire choice. And I think he's saying he ran 650B 47 Victorias for Lost and Found, which is a pretty mountain bikey course from what I understand. And then he's debating about 700C wheel set with 38 millimeter Schwalbe G1s. And based on what you just said, I think he wants to think in terms of 38 millimeter, his Schwalbe G1s.
Yeah, I would definitely not run a 650 because it's a very fast course. It's very rideable. There's never any, I guess if you're doing the stage race, it depends, but at least for the baked potato, what we're talking about today, it's basically a road racer's gravel course because it's, rolling pretty, like there's nothing super technical. There's no like crazy corners or turns to be concerned about. That right-hand turn and subsequent left-hand turn to get back onto the straight section to the finish. It's really the only main turn of the course. But the only reason why I would say go with a 38 would be just comfort over these washboards and rough sections where you can especially do tubeless if you can.
Run the lower pressure. Run
a little bit of a lower pressure.
What pressure did you run last year?
I was probably on 40 PSI.
Yeah. But do you think you could go lower? Because tire pressure and volume of tire is all related, but also your body weight. So if you're a bigger guy, if you weigh 200 pounds, you need maybe 2 or 3 more PSI. If you're, Egon Bernal, you don't need much at all.
Yeah, I mean, I might go a little bit lower. The only reason why I was running slightly higher with 40 is because of the climb from going out, is because a large section of it is paved and then it's still rideable, on the gravel, and so you want to be able to still roll pretty fast on there. But that's always a hard choice. It's a balance. I mean, everyone's so different. This year, like I said, I'm going to run the SKs again, 35 mil. I think that's like my favorite tire. So do that. But yeah, coming back just to finish up with the course, like I said, you go through the Copper Basin. They're doing it clockwise this year, but before you hit that this year, as we mentioned earlier, there's this little out and back, and it is slightly uphill out to this little campground. It doesn't go all the way out, but then you turn around. This is super rough as well, and it'll be fast coming back down. So it's just something to be aware of, is that like a little bit after you take that right hand turn, you're gonna have to make another right hand turn to go out to this out and back, and then back out. And so you just want to be just like in a long road race, you want to be as efficient as possible in the group. Don't take super hard pulls. Don't take as many pulls as a lot of other guys. Try and draft and save energy, and especially through, this section here. There's probably an aid station right here at this junction. There might even be one here. Make sure you're eating and drinking, because it's going to be hot. And it's hot and dusty and dry. I mean, it's Idaho, high desert, so it's going to be dry. But yeah, and so you do this loop, the Copper Basin loop. It's stunning. There's amazing vistas of the Pioneer Mountains back there, and it's a really cool area. But so then you come back, and so once you finish this loop, you come back and it's fast. And once you make that left-hand turn, this is the 10-mile death march from hell. So just be prepared for that. Because
it reminds me of the Col de Crusher, where you go down it and then you got to go back up it.
Yeah, it's totally like that. I mean, it's just a different kind of effort, but it's so long. And then even when my dad and I rode it a couple weeks ago and I filmed that video, we were both just like, we didn't even do the full course, but we just were like riding back on that section, just like not talking, because we're just like, just get me home.
In the zone.
Because then you have to come back up over the climb. And so the second KOM, which is, let's see here,
the way back.
So it's a lot shorter. So it's not a lot shorter. It's 3.8 miles, but it's less steep. It's over a lot faster.
Percent grade is 2%.
Yeah, so it's like
instead of 6.
So it's like an 18-minute effort versus a 30-minute effort. Some of these guys went pretty fast last year. I was suffering going slowly up it. But you have to get up over this as well. And if you're in a group, it's tricky, because then you have this crazy descent.
Crazy fast?
Yeah. It's a lot more technical than the first time up, the first descent, because it's like the Col de Crush, where you'll see it, because you'll ride up it, at the beginning, you'll ride up it. So you'll at least be prepared for what the descent's going to look like. But yeah, it's like a really narrow road, pretty sheer drop off. So you don't want to case it and lose it off the side of the mountain. But you're kind of like twisting around the mountain, pretty bumpy and stuff. And then you hit the pavement at about 3 or 4 miles. And then you're rolling back down that paved sections, like slight net downhill. And this is a tough part, because if you're in a group, or if you're by yourself, you could get caught by people, because it's, you're on gravel tires on pavement, kind of net downhill. It's like a pedal descent.
Pedaling descent.
And so I think what happened last year is, I don't remember if it came down to a sprint, but there was definitely like a few groups on the road getting caught and catching and attacking, because it's this like end of the race and everyone's pretty gassed, but it's fast, and you're on this paved section. And so just important to be still saving a little bit of energy for that section, because you could also lose a lot of time there if you're just dying over the climb and cruising in by yourself, for example. So
hopefully after 100 miles, you've already established your finishing order. You don't have to.
True, and that's what usually
get
happens.
out.
That's I mean, unless you're in the running for the win.
Have you seen that 40+ memes? He's like, "This is what sprinting for 50th place in the state road race championship looks like."
No.
So obviously, if you're going for an age group win or a win, you need to be on it. But if you're rolling in for 200th place, just roll in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
So that's basically the course. I mean, it's 100 miles, and it's not a ton of climbing. It's probably like 6,000 feet in total. 5,500 feet of climbing. So it's not a terrible amount of climbing, but it's pretty much bookended in those two main sections. And so the key component here, which will just kind of like broken record it, is to be prepared for that climb at the beginning, and you know, kind of dig deep to get into a good group.
Yeah, because that's a 1,300 foot climb, and it's like a 30-minute effort. That's pretty long. I mean,
and I highly recommend people that are coming in for Rebecca's to go ride it the day before, so you can at least get a sense of what it's going to look like. It's not a particularly hard climb or steep. You know, it's
6%.
Yeah, 6% average, and so, but it's pretty slow on the gravel section, and so. Go ride it. We also recommend, like we talked about in the Strava Vols episode, is starring it, that section on your Wahoo, so you can see how much, you know, how much you have left in the.
Yeah, this is what we podcasted. Was that 2 weeks ago? Yeah. Strava Vols. Like what we're talking about is come over here if you're following along on the video. Star this bad boy right here, and then sync that with your Garmin or your Bolt, and then guess what? You'll know during the race. You'll know how many. It'll give you an estimated time to finish. It'll work backwards using GPS data and just like this point right here. But it'll literally say, okay, you've traveled 3.7 miles. You have 4 more minutes to the top, which is enormous when you're suffering. And in the context of what we're recommending, when you need to hang on to that wheel so you can make a good group here. Yeah. So when you're like this far up, it's really nice to know how much further you have to go, because presumably you're kind of at your limit or maybe a tad over. So yeah, definitely use the Strava starred segments, and maybe along those lines.
I mean, you could do
the way back.
Yeah, you could do the second part of the climb. You could also do the Copper Basin loop.
This one.
But yeah, I mean, it's really all about tactics in terms of drafting and being in a good group. And
Copper Basin loop right here. Yeah.
I mean, it's about an hour or so. But pretty fast. I mean, again, like it's a really fast race, really fast course. And so